Hello and welcome to Morning Glory Grief Stories. I am so excited for today's conversation with Cara DeLaRosa. She's an animal end of life specialist, a certified pet loss grief coach, Reiki master, and an intuitive healer. I'm so excited to have her as part of our conversation today as we're exploring ways that grief really touches a lot of our lives and can be a catalyst for making positive change in the world. So welcome, Cara. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. So my name is Cara Elizabeth Della Rosa. And I'm so honored to have this opportunity to share my story because we don't often get the chance to share or express like the fullness of how we came to be where we're at with our business or in the world. And it's not the same typed on your website. You can't really
Um,
explain or show or even just like share the energy of who you are. So um, death work is a really important thing to me, hospice work and the grief work that I do. And I have an interesting kind of entry into that work in that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is known culturally for the 5 stages of grief, is my godmother, or I should say was, because she has passed, was my godmother. And what that meant was that my mother, who was a forerunner in the 1970s hospice movement when it was just starting to get off the ground in human hospice, was a student of Elizabeth's, and they shared a lot of the same beliefs and interest in near-death experiences and what happens after we die and the whole dying process. And what that meant for me formatively growing up
mhm.
was that from the age of 2 on, I was participating in my mother's summer camp program that was geared towards children with life-threatening illnesses.
Wow.
And she had started in the field of cancer back when cancer was seen as a contagious disease and no one wanted to talk about it. And, uh, people were put in the back of the hospital and not allowed to even, a lot of times they weren't even given a diagnosis. They just knew they were dying. So this was the time period, late 70s, early 80s, where cancer had this huge stigma. And and then that her shift focused to, or her focus shifted, excuse me, to working with women and children with HIV and AIDS. When the AIDS epidemic hit, she knew that was a population that was being very stigmatized as well. And so growing up, my summers were making friends with and playing with children with life-threatening illnesses. My peers were all dying, essentially. Um, and as the AIDS epidemic shifted and more medications came on board, um, children who were born with the virus or contracted the virus through blood transfusions or through, their parents started to live longer.
Mhm.
But initially, a lot of my friends were dying. So
I'm really taking that piece in. One, like what a normal part of death and dying work your life had. Like it was just very normalized in your life. Like I'm really appreciating the courage your mom had to be like, working with these populations when there was so much stigma. And I'm also really like, there's so much like ways that there was anticipated loss in your life or people you were getting close to that you knew you would lose. And so I'm
I
just like
was
really taking that in. Wow.
I was thinking about that because it got to the point, and a lot of the volunteers, right, the people that were drawn to doing this work were usually people that had been affected by HIV or AIDS or themselves, or, a lot of the volunteers and the staff died through the years as well. And so there was just this constant loss in my life. And it got to the point where it was like, my mom would say, "Oh, I need to tell you something." And I would be like, "Just say it. Who's died?" I think by the time I hit 21, so I grew up and I grew up in this environment, and then working the camp. When I came of age, I became a junior counselor, and then I became a counselor. And my last year was like, I think I was 21, where I finally was like, I can't. I literally had hit the point where I couldn't do the death and the loss anymore. I was like, I'm done. And I think that
You
I had,
stuck it out for a long time. Like that was a long time.
yeah, and I think there was some feelings of obligation. She really did involve all of my siblings too in the process. It was, and so there was, it was a mixed thing. It was a beautiful experience. It was a formative experience. I think looking back on it now, I wouldn't change it at all, but it did create some kind of compassion fatigue for me
Mm.
that had started in my late teens. And I think that also, like, we all have very complex childhood histories, right? So coupled with my own childhood experiences of where my needs weren't met and all of that stuff, it things really shifted for me in my 20s. The other formative piece for me very young around death was growing up on a farm.
Mm.
And on a farm where it was not a working farm, it was a hobby farm, but we had, beautiful animals. And for me as a child growing up in this on this, it was a 14-acre farm where it was a little bit too far for my friends to come visit, and I didn't get to go visit my human friends very often. The animals were really my companions and my friends.
Mm.
They were, yeah, the ones that I spent long, long, long hours with, playing with, talking to, communicating with, learning from. Um, and on a farm, different decisions are made at different times, or different animals die at different times. And there can be a lot of kind of brutal things that you see growing up. And for me, as a sensitive being who loved these creatures, and they were my peers, they were, aside from the summer camp where I had human peers and school friends that I didn't really connect to, the animals were like my people. Um, so there was a lot of loss there too, also a lot of joy, but a deeper understanding, this formative understanding of the life and death process as it happens. Um, and so, I saw early on the cycles of life and death. We For a while, my mom and stepfather were breeding a specific color of goat called a roan goat, and I used to help the goats give birth, and that was like one of the most beautiful things to, oh, she's in labor, let's go help her, birth these babies. And so really from a young age, and then into my teens, being a part of that natural life and death cycle with the animals,
Wow.
which later informed the work that I do now, and I didn't realize it until later.
Mm.
um
I'm like really hearing the ways there's like, it sounds like a kindredness with the animals. Like it makes sense that this became your life's work, given that like from such formidable years, you were really like you're saying, embedded in that life and death cycle with them.
It's wild. And, I went through some boxes of things my mom had saved from my childhood, and I found something I'd written in school in like third or fourth grade that said, I want to grow up and be a veterinarian.
Mm.
And it was so funny because I'd forgotten that, and my life took a completely different turn. I made the decision to go to art school and get a degree in graphic design and start working in the corporate field of graphic design. And that was I had these completely different goals. And it was very, uh, it led to where I am today, absolutely, because what happened for me, and I think what I'll do is I'll back up just a little bit and share with you that this time period of my early 20s, where I explained I kind of had some compassion fatigue. My sister, who was the closest sibling that I had, and this the sibling that I'm the youngest,
Mhm.
but she was the sibling that I spent the longest amount of time with, passed away when I was 21.
Mhm.
And suddenly, unexpectedly. and she left behind her beautiful 8-year-old daughter, and
Oh,
that created and she didn't have a current will or anything, and so that created this just complete chasm in our family system, where there was a big custody battle that took place and people chose sides, and our family was never the same again.
mhm.
So
Wow.
for me, and that was my 3rd year in college trying to get my graphic design degree, and I experienced flat out couldn't get out of bed depression, couldn't go to school, couldn't do finals. And fortunately, the school made, arrangements for me to be able to catch up and get my coursework in so that I could still graduate on time. Um, Very dark. That became a very dark period for me.
I'm so glad
And
the school was supporting you during that time. Like, what a humongous loss. And it's like the main loss, not main, but like this loss of your sister, but then the loss of like your family unit as you knew it.
yeah, yeah. And then I felt very alone in the experience. I mean, my family members, of course, were grieving, but I felt very alone in the experience.
Mhm.
Um, and I think sometimes I'm still surprised at how deeply that loss affected me. But it really was like the losses I've experienced in my life have really just like cracked me open in these different ways that now I see as like this massive gift. It's like an initiation, it's like you really have to like trudge through the darkness and the shadow work to get back to the light. Um, and so, yeah, that was a really formative, huge loss for me. And I still find ways to mourn. And it's interesting. It's been, I'm 45. So it's been, 24 years now. And her daughter's now pregnant with a little girl, which is very exciting. Her first baby. She's thriving. But yeah, it's interesting how the years are always different with the grief. My body always remembers the day that she died. I always remember getting that phone call. And some years my body is sad or heavy. Some years I move through it more gracefully, more with more ease. It's always so different. Um, and I've found ways to connect with her through the years. She's visited me in dreams. She's been very, very present this year, I think, because her daughter is pregnant, and I've been really feeling her and having these moments where her name is Faith. And these moments where, oh my God, Faith would have loved this place, or Faith would have loved this food, or how can I, celebrate her and honor her on the holidays and that sort of thing. So um, just grateful for that experience. Grateful that the whole experience, of the loss and how it continues to teach me and work me. So um,
Yeah, I appreciate you naming that piece about like how it's not just like we mourn the loss and then it's past tense, but how
mhm,
it like continues to shape us, it continues to form us. I hear you like continuing to build a relationship with your sister even today, all
mhm,
these years later, through
mhm,
her daughter or through your holidays, through the things of your life.
mhm, absolutely. And some of the huge pieces that I work with people around or teach is continuing bonds and ritual and mourning, taking action in our grief, and um, how speaking their name and sharing their stories and their memories continues to heal us,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
something
brings.
happened energetically. I don't know if you could feel it when you said her name, when you said Faith.
Yeah, I was like, I need to say her name now.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. And what a great name too.
mhm,
Um, yes. And so, um, okay, so then moving forward through my
mhm,
life, graduated college and got this degree and was working, spent 10 years, about 10 years in the corporate graphic design field, and was not very happy, and I had a very negative kind of pessimistic outlook on life. I had chronic depression. I really was struggling in a lot of ways.
mhm,
Went through a very painful divorce that ended with my own custody battle with my own human child that I had had, and ended with him keeping our dog, who was our first baby,
Mm.
Rosemary. And she was like my first baby. I was one of those dog moms that was like, I'm going to dress her up for Halloween. She's going to get a new costume every year, and she's going to have a Christmas sweater, and she's going to have a stocking, and she's, going to paint her nails. And she was my baby. She was my baby. And when we had our human child in 2005, I raised them as twins or siblings.
Mhm.
And Rosie just loved the baby. I think animals really know when you're carrying a baby, it's like they can hear the baby in your womb. Like they could feel it, they could hear it. They know.
Mhm.
And so Rosie got to spend some time with my kiddo before she passed. But what ended up happening was I got Rosemary for the last year of her life after our divorce.
Mm.
And I didn't know it at the time, but she had cancer.
Mm.
So I had gone through this custody battle and this divorce that I should mention lasted 4 years in the Oakland court systems. Like, this was not an easy thing while I was a single parent raising a toddler, trying to work a 40-hour corporate job. And I had all of these very traumatic things happen, traumatic losses happen at the same period of time. So between this divorce, I lost my job that I had put so much effort and energy into. I lost an ex-boyfriend, passed away.
Mm.
Um, and then my dog died. And it was like all in this very short, maybe you've heard of people having this experience. I have in my work now, where all of these things, it's just, and then the death of the animal, the beloved, what felt like child to me, was just the straw that sent me over the edge. Um, that led to complete collapse. So I had already been suffering from, this depression and challenges, mental health challenges. That was just and it was, her loss was sudden, in that I didn't know she had cancer, and one day her leg broke because the bone, it was bone cancer, and so the tumor had eaten through the bone, and her leg just snapped out of the blue one day. And I had to rush her to emergency, and they were like, we can't cast this, we can't, you're not going to want to amputate, there's nothing we can do, she's in incredible pain, you have to make the decision now. So in that way, it was a traumatic loss, because I didn't get the time to process,
Yeah. You did a
and
really impossibly hard decision. It sounds like immediately.
immediately. And there was a lot of guilt too, like a lot of guilt, because, oh, I hadn't done the best for her. I hadn't been seeking the proper, how did I miss this? And I've really done a lot of looking at that, during that time period, and all that I was holding and trying to contain in my life. And then this big, huge piece of her not getting the care, she could have been on pain management. I didn't do that, because I didn't know she was suffering in the way that she was. Bone cancer is one of the most painful cancers, so working in the veterinary field and all of the things that I know now, I'm like, I look back at that experience and I go, it's an opportunity for me to bring in compassion to myself and say, I did the best that I could with the information and knowledge and nervous system capacity that I had at the time.
Mm.
And if I could make new decisions or do it over again, I would have made different decisions. But I didn't have all those tools at my disposal at the time. So I did the very best that I could. With pet loss grief, there is so much guilt that gets woven in for the pet parents that people hold on to.
Mm.
And there's a lot around, particularly how the animal transitions, what the death looks like, and whether it was traumatic or not. That people tend to really hold on to and create, their mind will create stories around that will last for years, and people will suffer for years around this. And so a lot of the work that I do with the animal hospice and the end of life supportive care is education, so that people, like, I take the time to teach people about the normal variations of what can happen during the euthanasia process, what death could look like, whether, and I've supported people through natural deaths of their animals, meaning no euthanasia, just the animal dying on its own in its own natural process, what the steps and phases of that looks like, how to sit with that and hold space for that, because you're wanting to help and fix and you really can't while they're in this laborious process of dying. And oh, sorry, I just want to get this point out.
Yeah, go for it.
Is that when we are able to understand these certain things, like when our body relaxes and our eye muscles completely are relaxed, the eyes stay open. A lot of people don't know that when it takes effort and muscles for us to be able to blink. So when the body is fully, dead, the heartbeat has stopped, the eyes often stay open. And this is a small example in that people will think, oh my God, my pet their eyes were open. They were staring at me. I've had someone say, I was haunted. I've been haunted by this memory of them looking at me as the vet carried them out the door. And so someone had shared with them early on, this is a normal bodily process. This is what you might expect to see. Imagine the relief that, that could have come. And I hear stories like this all the time of people that were like, they needed multiple doses of sedative in order to relax. They were fighting it, and I was making the wrong decision. It meant that they were fighting the euthanasia process, right? When actually there's these bodily processes that when our metabolism is not pumping the blood properly, whether it's from a kidney disease or a heart condition or whatever disease process is going on, or cancers, we see this a lot too. The animal, even a small animal like a cat, might need multiple sedative doses. And it's not because they're fighting the euthanasia process, and it's not because the pet parent is making a bad decision or the timing was wrong. It's because the physiological process of what's going on with the animal isn't functioning properly. So these are the things I try to explain to people early on before we even get to that phase, so that they don't hold on to these things and create meaning for years and years and years to come, to beat themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
We do so much beating ourselves up as it is, that as much as I can do educationally to help decrease that, to help foster a relationship for the pet parent to be able to bring in pieces of compassion and self-love into their grief process. And so I've moved into the work that I do.
Can I just,
What happened? Yeah.
is it okay? I just want to there's something that feels really, I can, in like the way that you're speaking about this, I can hear how passionate you are about this process, about like informing people and helping people make informed decisions and like manage their expectations. And I'm also hearing just like there's like so much clarity and like competence and the way that it's coming through. So I'm really appreciating that. Like it's really clear this stuff. And but I'm thinking about like how as a society, especially a society like ours, where we tend to want to like tie a nice, neat little bow on a lot of things, or we have these images of death and dying that are like peacefully drifting off into, holding your animal and their eyes are closed and there's this like send off and they're surrounded by love and their family. Like I'm really appreciating the reality that you're giving people to work with in managing these expectations, that like it might not be as pretty as that picture. And like that doesn't mean anything about how much you love them. It doesn't mean anything about the decisions that you are being caused to make. Like I don't know, I'm just really appreciating the ways that you're like helping people take care of themselves and their expectations and their animals in this really difficult moment, so it doesn't lead to more unnecessary suffering.
Thank you. And there's an important piece to bring in around our I can't speak to any other society other than North American society because that's where I live. But our society here does not understand. We're not taught how to grieve, but we also are not really shown death.
Right.
We're
We
really
clean it
sheltered
up.
from death. And
Yeah.
so even in the human hospice, like people understand human hospice, but a lot of people still, I'm always surprised, don't even know that animal hospice is an option, that it exists. I mean, the things I hear from people are like, I had no idea that this was even a service that existed. And what does it look like? How does it work? Right. But even in human hospice, we often have drugs on board for keeping the human sedated and comfortable. And we do a lot of kind of keeping things a little bit pretty on the prettier side, especially like
Yeah.
in hospital settings. And death, a natural human death without meds on board, we don't often see. And it's death, a natural death, we don't often see, period.
Mhm.
And it is a labor, just like giving birth is a labor. And it's very difficult for people who are watching and witnessing to see the agonal breathing and see what looks like distress when really it's the body's process of shifting and transforming and letting go. Um, yeah, so my dog's death was the catalyst, the beautiful gift, the catalyst for me to completely do this 180 and go, my joy in life is working with animals. How am I going to do that?
Mhm.
That's and I did like, so much soul searching after this really, really difficult period where I spent a year of just immersing myself into therapy, soul retrieval, shamanic healing, every kind of alternative something I could get my hands on to understand where I was at, what was going on. And I really feel like her death was this catalyst for my soul's expansion. It was my spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
There was this, or some people call it the dark night of the soul, right? There was this unbelievable before her death and after shift, not the same person at all. Um, and so in really searching, what is it that I want to do in my life? The answer that kept coming was be around animals every day. How can I do that? And so my journey started like, okay, well, how do I do that? I don't know. I relocated to a different city. I enrolled in the vet tech program at the local JC to start exploring, well, do I want to become a vet tech and work in a hospital? And what's amazing is when we start to follow our guidance, whether it's our higher self guidance or our or source or our what our guides are telling us, or however you want to describe, like starting to follow and listen and hear the little breadcrumbs, these
Mhm.
amazing doors like open up for you when you're on the right
Mhm.
path. And so I enrolled in the vet tech program, and the first semester they launched this job shadow program that they'd never done before, that was only open to 12 students. And I was able to be one of the 12, where we got to shadow vet techs in all of these different clinic settings. So one was a big, huge corporation clinic. One was a specialty eye specialty clinic. One was a large animal clinic, like with horses and cattle, and get to see what that's like working with the large animals. Very different. Um, and holistic clinic. And I think there were, oh yes, a private practice, so just a whole scope of what it's like to be kind of a vet tech in those different environments. And oh, I got to be a surgical assistant. I got to do all of these cool things. And the day that I went for my job shadow program at the holistic clinic, I found the veterinarian who was a single doctor practice working out of her home. She had converted into an office setting, on her knees scrubbing her clinic floor, and she had just lost her assistant. And she's like, I need an assistant. Do you want a job? Like, it was that easy. These
Wow.
doors just opened up. And so my work became completely immersed in holistic care for animals, which I was already leaning that direction for my child who had had some autoimmune issues, um, and fully believe in holistic health. But I got to see firsthand real experiences of how acupuncture, chiropractic, Chinese herbs, flower essences, poultices, energy work, laser therapy, how all of these things coupled with the Western veterinary model, antibiotics and things like that. Oh, and homeopathy, she also did, really, really supported and changed and was curative for these animals. Like, it was mind blowing to me. It was like just, and the really cool thing is that it was just she and I. And so my experience working there was so experientially rich, because she literally said, I only want to be the doctor. I don't want to do anything else. So she trained me in managing clients, doing the inventory, ordering things, making the poultices, doing all of the prescription refills, restraining animals, spinning the blood, client care, education. And her practice at the time was, um, so the holistic model is really best as a preventative model,
Mhm.
right? Let's keep the animal, let's have the young animals come in and keep them healthy throughout their lifetime. She was getting a whole lot of clients that were like last ditch effort. Like, we've tried everything and nothing's working, and my animal has this cancer diagnosis. And now, what can you do? Can you throw the book at it and see what we can fix? And this was not ideal for her. So she has since transformed her practice. But at the time that I was there, it was a lot of end of life patients. And so naturally, being the person that I am and having had the experience that I had around my loss with Rosemary, I was doing a lot of holding space for their anticipatory grief and holding space for their grief as their animal died, um, in this office setting. So, I mean, this was like a completely concentrated, fully immersive experience
And
for
that's so
me.
unique too. I feel like you're
Yes,
not in a hospital setting where there's a million different interns or whatever that need to take a turn. You really got to like be the person doing the caring and
yes,
learn directly alongside the doctor. That's so cool.
yes. It was amazing.
And I'm like, stunned by like just like the right place, right time, the ways that like the universe was conspiring as you were finding the right path.
Totally. 100%. I mean, yeah, there's no other way to explain it.
Totally.
And then what happened was that, um, she made the decision to move her practice to a big corporate setting that wanted to incorporate a holistic practice in their big corporation.
Mhm.
And having my own history with being in corporate design, I was like, I'm not going back to corporate. It's just not who I am. So I made the decision not to go with her. And at that point, I decided to launch my own business, which
Wow.
was at the time, so this is 2012, I launched in 2012. My first step was to become a Reiki practitioner because I knew that I wanted to be able to offer healing to animals. So that kind of started my journey. And then I launched my business, which was called Healing Hands Animal Care, which was a specialty pet sitting business that was catered towards senior and special needs animals, um, and offering Reiki, and knowing that hospice was always my end goal to get there. And interestingly, when I launched my pet sitting business, and we started with no clients, really, I had no savings, no income. Like, I just built it from the ground up, and my reputation within my community grew and grew and grew, um, to where I was at one point, one of like the three top providers in our city, and there were six, I had up to four employees because it was myself and my husband at the time as co-owners. And then we had up to four employees. So at one point there were six of us. I grew this business, from the ground up. And interestingly, one of the first clients I got had used us for pet sitting. And then when it came time for her dog to die, she called me and said, I need you. I need you here to help me walk through this. And we did a natural death together. And it was like the most beautiful. All I can say is that it felt so natural to me. It felt like this was work I had been doing my entire life. It was so organic. It was so, and it was, I was able to create this beautiful transition where, she left me this beautiful testimonial that I have on my website where she just said, if you hadn't have been there, I would have completely cracked. You were able to just hold space for this and walk me through the entire dying process in such a beautiful way. That was my introduction. And my work has just deepened and developed since then. And I'm like, I kind of, say this is like my hyperfixation is grief work and the work that I do. I am constantly like doing continuing education and how can I deepen my work? How can I learn new modalities? How can I support people um, in deeper ways? How can I give people new tools? Is staying abreast of all of like the research on neuroplasticity coming out and polyvagal theory and how can we regulate our nervous system in grief. And this is like totally my passion. Absolutely. And
I'm
I find it so rewarding to be able to support people and then have them come back to me and say, oh my God, I tried this Epsom salt protocol that you have. And I swear to God, I'm sleeping better. My life feels completely different. Just these little tools that I can give people that are greatly informed by my own grief journey too.
mm, I love the way that you're bringing personal and like professional experience, but I'm hearing there's like a click. I remember the first time I facilitated a grief circle and I left feeling like that wasn't working. Like it was just sort of coming out of me very naturally because I
Mm,
just felt so home there.
mm,
And I'm hearing this like moment for you in guiding and supporting this person in the loss of her pet, like finding that place of home and that place of like naturalness and that place of like, I don't know, this is me. Let me know if this lands for you, but that place of like, this is what I was meant to do.
mhm. 100%. This is my soul's work.
Hmm.
100%. It was just like, yep, got it.
Hmm.
Got it. Um, and it's heavy work.
Yeah.
Absolutely heavy work. Grief work is heavy work. Hospice work is heavy work. And ooh, I've lost so in my pet sitting business was structured so that I was catering to aging and ill animals,
Hmm.
special needs pets. So I knew that these animals that I was caring for, that I would fall in love with and have connected relationships with, I knew that they were going to pass on. And whether the owner wanted me to be present or help or not, I went through a lot of loss. We've lost, I have all these great books of all of the animals we've cared for through the years, and they have shorter lifespans. We've lost a lot of them. And so I've
And
had to look
like
at,
parallel too between the beginning of your life
I know.
and then the end, not the end of your life, hopefully, but like, but just and where you are present day,
Yeah.
around like being around people and like forming deep connections, know
Yes.
that they're going to die soon.
Yes. Yeah. And then looking at how do I take care of myself so that I'm not stuck in this compassion fatigue situation, or where I can no longer do the work because it's been so painful and there's been so much loss.
Is there
So
like
I
is there one thing that you've found that's really been helping you do that or that did at that time?
yeah, tuning into my own needs and my own body and working with giving myself grace and time to recuperate. So with really difficult losses with the animals, like say it's a client animal that I was really attached to, I'd give myself a week off to just process the loss, or a couple of days or whatever. I would give myself time to mourn, actually. Is
Mhm.
you can't do this work and be completely open-hearted and present and not feel. And so allowing myself the time to mourn after these losses, allowing myself the time I mean, my heart breaks for so many of these pet parents. Like, I'm right there hand in hand with these people,
Mhm.
walking through what they're going through at the end and seeing their grief. Like, I feel that. I'm completely an empath, and I have to, like, care for myself too.
Yeah. And I love
And
that. It sounds like you're building in time to mourn and time to grieve as just like part of the business model,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
I guess so. Yeah.
like truly, and I feel like that's something that's really missing from our culture is grieving as a normal thing that just it takes time and it's natural. And like I wish I have this real deep longing that we could build it into our society more naturally, where people aren't like, okay, are you over it yet? But it's just like a
Oh,
natural place where it's like, actually, no, I'm mourning this whole relationship, this whole connection I had and I was building.
yes,
Mm.
yes. And
Yeah.
to speak to that, my loss of Rosemary was so profound, and I found it to be so isolating because generally pet loss is seen as a disenfranchised grief that's not recognized by the uh, general population as significant as a human loss.
Mm.
However, for me and for the people that find me and my clients, their loss tends to feel more significant than the other losses they've experienced in their life, and they don't understand why. They don't understand why their nervous system is completely upended. They don't understand the depth of this grief. And I do. I 100% do because I experienced it to that degree where I couldn't get out of bed, right?
Mm.
And I couldn't function, and I had to like get support.
Well, yeah, our animals are these constants. These are
Yes.
constant beings in our lives. And like I don't say that in any way to compare it to any other losses, but it makes sense that it would be that upending as well and be that significant as well, because our animals are these consistent relationships day in, day out. Um,
It's that the attachment and identification to being a caregiver and
mm,
caring for, almost in a parental role with a child that never grows up because always needs us to feed them and walk them and take care of them. And
mm,
so there's the connection to being a caregiver, caretaker, that is so deep that often people feel like when they don't have that ability to be a caregiver anymore or do for another, I've heard it described as like they feel like a limb has been cut off, a part of themselves has been cut off. There's the constant unconditional love being mirrored back and forth between the human and the animal. That is, when that's gone, it can feel completely devastating because you're no longer receiving that unconditional love. And human relationships can be so complicated sometimes. And animal relationships are often not as complicated. And then in that piece too, there's the sometimes this animal being, this little soul, is the first time that the human has fully been seen, period. Fully
mm.
seen
Just got
or
chills when you said
heard.
that.
Yeah. And a lot of that, right, goes back to our childhood wounding and what happens around how our attachment stuff gets formed. Um, Sometimes people have an easier time bonding with animals in this very deep way. And and I believe that animals have a soul just the way that we have a soul, that there are these little beings in there that are actually, I believe, they're our greatest spiritual teachers, and that they are equal to, if not way more advanced than humans, because they come in and have a shorter lifespan, and they come in and they teach us all of these amazing lessons about unconditional love and patience and being present in the moment and all of these things, right? That we
Mm,
can learn from them. They're just these incredible beings. So there's the loss of that soul connection, or that. So I also work with continuing bonds.
mhm,
How do we continue this relationship with your loved one? How do we create a daily ritual? How do we bring in more some of those aspects of the caregiving that you're missing? How do we continue to share their stories and speak their name and talk to them? um, that was a huge part of my own journey with losing Rosemary, is continuing to speak her name and share her stories and talk about her, to the point where my husband, who's now my ex-husband, he never met her, but he felt like he knew her because of all of the stories. She's an
Mm.
ever-present name that's still very much alive in our household,
Yeah, I'm
right?
seeing the way you like helped her kind of like live on through you and live on through the stories and still be a part of your life.
Mhm.
I feel like I could like go off on different trails forever talking about this stuff, but I really want to give you a chance to share about your business and
Oh,
what you're
thank
doing
you.
right now. I know that we've gotten to like little parts of what you do in that work, but yeah, please tell us more about your current project and the work that you're doing now.
Thank you so much. So, I had Healing Hands Animal Care and I had Pet Loss Alchemy, and I've combined them now to just be under my name, Cara DeLaRosa. So I'm working under Cara DeLaRosa. The website is caradelarosa.com. And I do quality of life assessments. So helping pet parents understand their whatever diagnosis or whatever aging process their animal is in, and how to monitor the quality of life, how to know when it's time, how to find that right time for transition that's neither too soon um, or no, neither too long, because we don't want the animal to suffer or be in pain. I offer animal hospice, well, palliative care, which is comfort care that can last for even a year. This is, people think animal hospice has to be like complete end of life. It can actually, I like working with people for longer periods of time to develop a relationship with them and support the animal and them through the process. And in that, we also get to start exploring anticipatory grief and giving people tools to buffer them against the impending loss. And then, of course, all of the educational pieces around what to expect so that um, we don't have as much guilt at the end, or ideally doing everything we can now so that we avoid feeling any guilt because we did everything we could. And then supporting people through um, one-on-one grief coaching together. And then I've also developed a 7-month pet loss course
Can
that is self-paced
you say
that,
that again? Sorry, I had
oh
cough.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. Um,
it's a 7 month.
I have a 7-month pet loss course that I built out with like a bunch of brave souls that were like, I'm willing to try this. And we built it out together. Um, and now I'm on the second round of the 7 months. So I'm moving into, yeah. And I've had people say, you know what? I made it through the 7 months. I loved the material. It was so dense that now that I'm 7 months out from my grieving process, or however long, they are out from their grieving process, they want to come back and take it again because their brain is able to absorb more of the information. And in it, I go through neuroplasticity and nervous system regulation tools, coping strategies to work with the grief. There's shadow work involved in looking at the guilt that they might be experiencing, and a deep diving into the grieving process, really leaning into the grieving process.
Mm.
And it's transformative work for people. They
And
don't
I can
leave the
imagine that
course.
being effective with your pets, but also with all kinds of grief that you're navigating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to live is to grieve. We all experience loss. Absolutely. And people find, wow, this is the first time I've ever, like, my animal's death is the first time I've ever allowed myself to really grieve and go back in and look at the other losses I've experienced in a new way. So
Mhm.
it's teaching people to also have new tools to go back and look at their other griefs that they've experienced in life. Um, so that's really beautiful and exciting. And it's all of the things that I teach one-on-one, but in a self-paced um, situation where they get a video module every month with exercises, journal prompts, and things to practice for the month. And then we meet in a group setting to debrief and talk about the tools and where they're at in their grief journey and what they liked, what they didn't like. And then and for people that work with me, either private clients or people course members, I also have a monthly pet loss support group that I've been hosting for years. It's a small group and it's just beautiful. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
I'm seeing just the ways that you're meeting people like in all the ways wherever they're at. Like if you're deep in your grief journey 7 months out and want to come back and do more, you've got them. And if you're just beginning and dipping your toe in, if like it's maybe a distant thought that your pet might be ill one day, even if you want to prepare yourself for what you might expect and things like that. Like I'm seeing you really be able to meet people at all different places in this process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my passion. It's like, and I want to continue to learn new tools and share these tools with people as I learn. And so it's like an ever evolving thing.
Mhm.
And grief has been, this is the thing that keeps popping in for me, is that grief has been my guiding light through life. Absolutely. And there's even new facets of the grieving process that I've experienced that I want to kind of deepen my knowledge around and help support people in our society around, separate from pet loss. Just um, being able to offer support to people that are grieving in bigger ways is my plan for the future.
Mm, that's a really beautiful and very important vision. And I'm so glad that you're doing it. Like you're clearly so uniquely suited to be doing this work. And I can just hear how much heart and soul you're putting into it.
Thank you so much.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. So tell us, where can we find out more about you?
So my website, caradelarosa.com. I'm on Instagram at Pet Loss Grief Coach.
I think there's periods in between those.
There
I
is. It's like pet dot loss dot
and
grief dot coach. And then
if you're
you can
watching this, she'll be tagged in it. So you'll be
okay.
able to get, yeah, let's get you from here.
And then Instagram, or that was Instagram, Facebook, Cara DeLaRosa dash Pet Loss Grief Coach. Um, it's also fine for people just to add me, my personal Facebook account, Cara DeLaRosa. And um, I also have a goal of like doing more social media presence. I haven't, I'm pretty spotty with it. Um, but that's pretty much it.
Wow. Gosh, thank you so much. I'm thinking just about like how near and dear like our pets are to us and how oftentimes they're really not a part of the conversation about grieving and mourning and connecting and dying and all the things. And I'm just so moved and so touched and so grateful that you're bringing them in, because like so many people on earth have pets that mean so much to them. And it's a beautiful thing to like to have the support extend to them too.
Yes. And I'd like to add,
Yeah, please add.
the animals deserve to be honored and
Hmm.
treated with the utmost respect through the entire dying process. Um, period.
Amen. Hmm. Wow. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for adding that piece. They do. They do. Well, thank you so much again, Cara. It's been such an honor to connect with you, to hear your incredible story. And um, yeah, I'm just really moved by the whole, like, so many like full circle things about ways that you were influenced early on and really like brought in, sort of initiated into like the death and grief work. And then you had your own initiation into it. And now you are like really partnering with people as they're experiencing their own initiations into this work as well. So thank you so much for being here and for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world as well. And it's such an honor to have you as a colleague out in the world doing grief work and relationship work, which is beautiful work. And thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to share my story. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.